It all started with my wife telling me that I wasn't allowed to be a redneck and have jacked up pickup trucks anymore, and my neighbor collecting one of every generation, and he had had one of every generation up to a C4 at the point in time that I met him. Welcome to the Full Octane Garage. Today's topic is going to be car addictions, and I happen to be a car addict. There are worse things to be than car addicts, but certainly probably not a whole lot cheaper than car addicts. I am addicted to Corvettes, and my Corvette addiction started probably in about 1991, some 30 years ago. I didn't even know I would have a Corvette addiction. I didn't even know I liked Corvettes at that point. I had just gotten out of the military. I didn't have a lot of money, had a Honda CRX and a pickup truck, and I thought that was some really cool stuff. So fast forward a couple of years after I got out of the military, I was able to buy a house. I actually met my now wife, and I had some big redneck trucks, and she basically told me I wasn't allowed to be a redneck anymore, so I needed to find a new hobby. My next door neighbor was collecting Corvettes. He was collecting one of every generation, and he actually daily drove a 1984 Corvette at the time, and he also had a really cool looking 1968 Corvette. So I kind of got attracted to Corvettes, and I got to thinking, gosh, the C4s back then were really the hot ticket, and this is 30 years ago, 1991, and I sold some of my trucks, and I went and I found my very first Corvette. My very first Corvette was a blue 1987 coupe. It had a 4+3 transmission. What at the time was a really cool transmission. It turned out, over time, it turned out to be a really bad transmission. This car I bought from a military officer that had come back to the States after an overseas tour, and he custom ordered it to be delivered to him at port. Back then, the military had special deals with the car manufacturers to deliver a car at port. You jump in the car when you come back and you drive home. So this car was ordered pretty bare bones. It was a gorgeous metallic blue. It had the 4+3 transmission manual. It had power windows, was probably the only option it had. It had no power seats. It had no cassette deck and a radio. It was just a basic AM/FM radio. So it was as bare bones as you could possibly get in a Corvette. So I decided this was going to be my first Corvette. So I had the Corvette for a while, and I bought it in 1991. And by about 1993, 1994, I decided I wanted a convertible Corvette. I really liked the C4 Corvette at the time, because that's all it was out. So I ended up finding another 1987 red on red Corvette convertible, and it had a little higher miles, so I did a swap. I got the convertible. We moved a little bit further south out of the Washington DC area, got to North Carolina, and the convertible lasted for a little while, and then I came across a 1993 polo green Corvette convertible with a tan interior, tan top, and I thought, holy cow, this is the car. So we trade up to the 1993 C4 Corvette, which still rode like a log wagon, but at the time it was a really cool car. So I really enjoyed that car up until 1998, when the C5s were announced. The C5s came out, and they were pretty much revolutionary. So I was like, I gotta have a 1998 Corvette. So they came out with a magnetic red, this really cool magnetic red color. So we picked it up. It had black top, black interior, really cool car. This was a manual transmission car we picked up, and I kept it for almost 2 years. And then the 2000s came out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have an 00. Everything was 2000 this, 2000 that, so I've got to have an 00 Corvette. So I factory ordered a brand new 2000 bowling green color convertible Corvette with tan interior, tan top, very similar to the 1993 one we had. absolutely stunning car. So I had that car in 2000. So I was enjoying the 2000 Corvette, and I was getting ready to turn 40 years old in 2002. So my wife, my incredible wife, surprised me with a brand new Corvette order. I never would have expected this. She had heard me talking about Z06s here and there and there and everywhere, and she basically conspired with a few of my good friends, and they put in a Z06 order for me. So Christmas day before Christmas actually was my birthday, opened the box up, and to my surprise there's a model of a Z06, and I was like, okay, this is her joke that I actually got a Z06. Well, it turns out I dug a little deeper in the box, and there was a key, and there was an order form, and I truly had an order for a Z06 from Corvette Chevrolet in Atlantic City. So in about 4 or 5 weeks, I would be picking up my new Corvette. So I enjoyed that car for a couple more years. We moved to Florida. Unfortunately, we were lacking garage space, so we had to pick one or the other, and we were like, well, living in Florida, it's probably better to keep a convertible. So we sold the Z06, and that's the car that I will never live down selling. It was my 40th birthday present, and maybe someday I'll get another one. So by 2009, I still have the green 2000 convertible Corvette, and I decide that I want another Z06. So we end up upgrading to I found a really nice 2007 red Z06 with a called mod red interior. It's a red and black interior. So I upgraded to the 2007 Z06. Drove that car for 3 or 4 years, and then coming up on my 50th birthday in 2012, I decided that I wanted to build a car. I thought it was going to be so cool to build a car. Again, my wife got tired of hearing about this car build, and she said, just stop it and go find one. So I went to Texas, and I found a 1960, actually two 1960 Corvettes in Texas, and I'm living in Tennessee at the time. And I knew one of the two I was not bringing home. It was the one that was the Pink Floyd car. That was actually all painted album stuff and airbrushed and a wing and all kinds of stuff. As you can see in these pictures, it was very hideous. The other car looked more normal. I thought that's the car I was coming home with, but I get to Texas, I get it up on the lift and realize that it had been in a rear-end collision. It had extensive body work, and I got drug over to Pink Floyd and looked at Pink Floyd, and it was a no-hit car. It was in pretty decent shape. It was a complete car. It just looked bad. So lo and behold, in 2012, Pink Floyd came home, and that was my age 50 restoration project. So 7 months later, the car was complete in 2013, and I still have that car today. Now, in the midst of all of this, I had a good friend of mine here in town that had a 1963 split window that he tried to sell me at the same time I was buying the 60 Corvette, but I really wanted a convertible. At the time, my wife didn't think too highly of the coupe, and so we ended up with a convertible. So fast forward, once I finished the 60 Corvette toward the end of the year, the 1963 split window came back available, and I looked at it, and we realized it would probably be a good investment to start with. It needed some work. We would fix it up. So in 2013, we added a 1963 split window to the collection. Red. Red seems to be my theme color for the most part. So in 2013, also came up, cars just find me, I don't know what the deal is. Another good friend of mine who was who builds resto mods down in Alabama, had a 1956 resto mod project that he started and he didn't finish, so he asked me if I would be interested in buying it. So I went down there and I bought my $30,000 box of parts, and as you can see in the pictures, it did have a custom chassis. It had all new running gear, but it was just a shell of a car. So it was a huge undertaking for me to finish that car. But I did pick that car up in 2013. So 2012, 13 was a big year for cars. We ended up with a few Corvettes, and as you can see in the garage pictures here, all three of the red Corvettes. I had the 56, I had the 60, and the 2007 all lined up. And then in 2014, another good friend of mine worked for General Motors, and he had a demo 2014 Corvette that he brought out, one of the pre-launch cars. And Debbie and I sat in the car and fell in love with it. So we had to order one. So the goal was to order a 2014 Corvette, brand new, take museum delivery, do the museum tours, do the whole thing. And so we got a red 2014 Z51 package with red interior, and we traded in, or actually sold, the 2007 Z06, but we kept the 63 and 60 Corvette, so we still were a 3 Corvette family. So after the 2014 Corvette, another good friend of mine, again, these cars just find me, I don't know how this happens, a friend of mine had a 1963 Resto Mod build that he started. He had a gorgeous SR3 chassis, an LS3 motor. Got to the point where it was a shell of a car very similar to my 56. You'll see some pictures up here of what this thing looked like. And we were joking around one day, and I said, "You're not going to finish that car anytime soon, why don't you sell it to me?" And he asked me if I was serious, and obviously I was. So I now owned 2 split window Corvettes for a period of time, which my wife thought was very unfair. So we ended up selling the original split window and upgrading to the Resto Mod, of which that was in 2017 when we purchased the car. Things happened in life. The car sat for 2 years while I worked on some other projects, and lo and behold, in the end of 2020, the car is now complete. Okay, so we fast forward to 2020, and all of a sudden, the C8 Corvette, I get to sit in one. I'm just a little too tall for them, so I've decided that I'm honing in on getting another C7 Corvette. Figured 2 things. One, it's the last of the front engines, and it's the last of the manual transmissions. So I decided that I wanted either a Grand Sport or a Z06 wide body. The Z06 I kind of finally figured out was just a little more horsepower and I really needed. I wasn't going to use it all. I love the look of the Grand Sport. So I went looking for a 2017 Grand Sport, and there were a few out there that I really liked, but they were just the reds, the blacks, the whites. And then I'm looking on Car Gurus, and I come across this 2019 Grand Sport, 7,500 miles. It is Admiral Blue with the Heritage package, has the white stripe, the red hash marks, has the torch red interior, black wheels. It is the car I would have ordered from the factory. It has a 7-speed manual transmission. It has the performance data recorder set up, the GPS. It's a 2LT, and it is everything that I thought I wanted. So I get a little bit of courage up after about 2 days of looking at it. So I went to my wife and I told her, "You're not going to be happy, but I have found the car." And I did find the car. This is just one incredible car. So since 1991, when I first realized that I was a Corvette lover, I have had 13 Corvettes over that period of time. I have had everything but a C3 Corvette. The C3s are ones that I think they look cool, like 69 to 70, 72, convertibles mostly. But they just haven't really sparked my appetite like all of the other ones. I love the pop-up headlights on the C2. I actually love the pop-up headlights on the C5. Unfortunately, they went away with the pop-up headlights, so I now have a very futuristic looking C7. But 13 Corvettes, that is where my Corvette addiction, my Corvette passion came from. It all started with my wife telling me that I wasn't allowed to be a redneck and have jacked up pickup trucks anymore, and my neighbor collecting one of every generation, and he had had one of every generation up to a C4 at the point in time that I met him, and ever since I've just been in love. So tell us about your car addiction. Tell us what kind of car you're addicted to, whatever marque it is, whatever brand it is, and tell us a little bit about when it started and how it started. Thanks for being with us at the Full Octane Garage. We love sharing this information with you. We love enjoying these car stories, and look forward to seeing you in the near future.